Cheating on your wife with her permission. This was supposed to be a joke. Every year, a couple months before the wedding, my wife asks me what I want for my birthday, or Christmas, or anniversary. Every year she gets the same answer. I don't know. Anything will do for me. This has been going on for 20 years, and it's always the same, never, ever changing. One day, we were sitting in our favorite restaurant having breakfast, and Gary asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said, I want to see Annie's breasts. Jerry, expecting my usual, I don't know, was caught off guard and spit out a mouthful of coffee she had just sipped. Annie, our waitress, saw this and rushed over to her with a rag to wipe it off. Are you okay, honey? Is there something wrong with the coffee? As Annie left, my wife asked, What do you mean? It's simple, I replied. You asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said I wanted to see Annie's breasts. My wife stared at me as if I had lost my mind. I don't want to take her to bed, I said. I just want to see her breasts. Gary said, I think you'd better explain that to me. Jerry and I have been together for a good 25 years, most of which we have been married, and we have developed a comfortable lifestyle. Every Saturday and Sunday we have breakfast out of the house, and usually at the same restaurant. Also, I work at night and Jerry works during the day, so I usually stop by the restaurant on my way home from work. Annie has been working the day shift as a waitress for as long as I've been staying there. She's 4'10", 100 pounds, and most of that weight is her breasts. She has 36 C cups, maybe more. And she has a nice trim body, but it never interested me. Annie was a health fanatic. She lifted weights 6 days a week, and she had hard muscles where I would rather see curves. One day I was standing at the register paying for breakfast, and Annie was behind the counter taking my money. She was wearing something low-cut that day, and I could see part of the tattoo on the inside of her left breast. From that day on, every time I saw Annie, I wondered what that tattoo was. Gary said, You want me to somehow get Annie to show you that tattoo? I smiled and replied, Yes, that's what I want to get for my birthday. She then asked how she could get it, and I replied that I had no idea. I've never helped her buy any other gifts, so why should I know what she should do with this one? Like I said, it was a joke and I forgot about it. 2 months passed, and on my birthday, I stopped by a restaurant on my way home from work for breakfast. After ordering blueberry pancakes, I sat down to read the morning Rocky, and about 5 minutes later, Annie placed the hot pancakes in front of me. I looked up from the paper and saw that she had placed a candle in the center. Happy birthday, Annie said. Doing anything special? No, I replied. It's a work night. Jerry and I can go out this weekend to celebrate. Well, enjoy yourself, she said. Breakfast is on me today, and left to serve other customers. Back home, I followed my usual routine. A couple hours of yard, garage, or housework, and then to bed until 4 o'clock. At 4, I'd get up, put the house in order, and then get dinner ready so it would be ready for Jerry's arrival. When she got home, she had birthday cake and ice cream with her. We finished dinner, and I was just clearing the table when the doorbell rang. Gary looked at her watch and said, About time. I glanced at her, and she said, Your birthday present. I'll have it delivered. Turn your face to the wall, close your eyes, and don't look until I tell you to. And she went to open the door. After about 2 minutes, she said, Okay, now you can open your eyes and turn around. I opened my eyes and turned around, and there, naked to the waist, stood Annie. Annie's breasts were amazing. If soccer balls were hard and cut one in half, and then put the two halves side by side, you'd get Annie's breasts. I know I've said before that Annie doesn't have enough curves to satisfy me, but those breasts made me horny. And Jerry noticed it. Doesn't that sound like a man? All he wants is to see the tattoo, she said, and walked over and grabbed me by the scruff of the neck. Yes, that's right. And then Annie stepped forward and, placing her breasts so close that I could touch them with my tongue, said, We agreed that you could look but not touch. But when she said that, her hand came down, and she also squeezed my body. I thought, if you're allowed to touch, I'm allowed to touch. And I stuck my tongue out and ran it across Annie's breasts, and it was like an electric shock. I felt Annie's body shudder when my tongue touched her, and she jumped back. "Naughty boy! That's the only thing I'll have to cover myself for." And she pulled her blouse up. We ate cake and ice cream and made small talk for about an hour, and then Annie left. I asked Jerry how she'd managed to get Annie to agree to this. Turns out she started eating at the restaurant every day, asking Annie about her bodybuilding program, and they became friends. One day, Annie sat down with her during a break. They started laughing about silly situations, and Gary told Annie about my birthday wish. "You've certainly made him mad about your tattoo." "Let's do it," Annie said. "Let's do what?" Jerry asked. "Let's show him the tattoo on his birthday." "He was just kidding," replied Gary, and Annie said, "Yeah, that's why he won't be expecting it." I just shook my head and decided I'd better be more circumspect in my jokes from now on. Ah, yes, the tattoo. An exquisitely done little multicolored butterfly. After my birthday, the relationship between Annie and I changed. When she waited on me, she developed the habit of leaning over and placing her elbows on the table as she took my order. That way I had direct access to her blouse, could get a good look at her breasts and tattoo and take it home with me. And Annie knew it. A few months went by, and one day Annie said, "My birthday is in 2 weeks. What are you going to get me?" "What do you want?" I asked. "Well, I showed you my breasts. I think it's only fair that you show me your dignity." I sat there speechless for a couple of moments before I stammered, "You can't be serious." Annie laughed and said, "Oh, but I am serious, honey. Oh, but I am serious." I shook my head and said, "Jerry would never let me do that." Annie laughed again. "Don't be so sure of that, honey. Ask her. What have you got to lose?" That night at dinner, I told Jerry about Annie's strange request. "Are you going to do it?" she asked, which caught me off guard. I expected to hear something like, "Over my dead body only." "You mean you don't care?" Jerry laughed and replied, "Just like a man. You always want to look at naked ladies, but you don't think for a second that ladies like to look at things too." For some reason, the way she said it pissed me off, and I said, "Okay, I'll do that." The next day at breakfast, I told Annie that I was going to get her something she wanted for her birthday, and she replied, "I'll believe it when I see it." As Annie's birthday approached, I began to question whether I should do it, and I told Jerry I wasn't sure it was a good idea. "Hey," she said, "you don't think having her show you her breasts was a bad idea?" I looked at her. "You make it sound like you want me to do it." Jerry only smiled and replied, "I just want to see if you have the courage to do it." "Okay," I thought. "If that's how you feel about it, I'll do it. If I show Annie my dignity and she wants to play with it, you have no one to blame but yourself." Annie's birthday came, and it was decided that Gary and I would go to Annie's for dinner, and then I would show the family jewelry. When it was time to leave, Gary said she wasn't feeling well and was going to stay home. I said, "I'm not doing this without you being here." "Don't be such a wuss," Jerry said. "She's waiting for you, and if you don't want her to spit in your balls from now on, you'll go." She then told me that Annie had called and asked if we could stop by on the way and pick up a couple bottles of red wine. I showed up at Annie's at 7 cows with shaky knees and 2 bottles of Merlot. I couldn't believe I'd gotten myself into this mess. Annie opened the door. "Hi, you're just in time." Jerry called and made excuses, and I told her not to worry, I was going to be delicate. She fed me a steak, we drank some wine, and finally it was time for action. I stood up and started to unbuckle my belt, but Annie said, "No, not here. My sister might come in and I don't want her to see us and get the wrong idea." She led me down the hall to the bedroom and said, "No one will disturb us here." My knees were shaking, Sweat was trickling down my neck, and I wished Jerry was there for moral support. I unzipped my fly and pulled out my dignity, and Annie said, "Oh no, I was naked from waist to waist for you, so you should be naked from waist to waist for me." I got out of my pants and took off my boxers. Annie started to walk towards me, and I took a step back and said, "You can look, but not touch." And Annie replied, "Yes, that's right." She was touching my body. After a minute, she took her hands off me and looked up and asked, "Are you sure you don't want me to touch?" I don't think I need to list all the intermediate steps that happened before we ended up in Annie's bed. But once there, I found that all of Annie's strength training had given her great stamina and amazing muscle control. She spent the next 45 minutes having sex with me, and when we were done, I was completely devastated. I lay there looking up at the ceiling, and Annie said, "Penny for your thoughts." I was quiet for a minute and then said, "I don't know how I'm going to explain this to Jerry. She won't like it at all." Annie asked, "Why tell her?" "Because she's my wife and I love her and I won't lie to her." "That's so sweet," came a voice from the closet, and then the door opened and Jerry walked into the room. She looked at Annie and said, "I told you he couldn't help himself." I pounced on her. "Did you know about this? About Annie going to do it?" She smiled. "Of course. It was the price for you to see her breasts." I looked at her and asked, "And you're not mad about that?" "No," she replied. "Why would I be angry? There isn't a man in the world who would resist the opportunity to have sex with another woman. I sent you here knowing that." Annie spoke up. "And the best part is that you won't have to wait until my next birthday to do it again." I looked at Gary and she smiled. "Do you think you can handle both of us?" The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.